and sexuality, and especially fulfilling desire with another man, a younger man. It seems it's implied from the film, maybe a queer man. Like it's just a very interesting dynamic that I feel like does not get as much attention. And then it becomes about that publicity machine. Like how much
Yes.
are
That's what I
you
was going to say with the men. It's the publicity, like a Magic Mike. Can you believe these Channing
exactly
Tatum is a stripper in this? Like it's the appeal of something out of the norm for
for
the guy to do it. This is Dr. Andrew Rimby. Thanks for joining us here in the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. If you don't know, you can get all of our episodes ad-free on Patreon, patreon.com/ Ivory Tower Boiler Room. All of Mary's True Crime episodes ad free, video episodes ad free from the ITBR interviews. Also, follow us on Instagram, please. Ivory Tower Boiler Room. I like to put a lot of exciting arts and culture clips from the podcast, you know, TV shows, films that we've discussed. TikTok is Dr. Andrew Rimby. Long story, the Ivory Tower Boiler Room one got taken off by TikTok because it was too salacious and scandalous, in my opinion. But I might be just having an Oscar Wilde complex there, thinking, that I was causing such a sensation on TikTok. So please rate us on Apple. It really, really helps. Review us. If you're on Spotify, you can rate us there too. YouTube, please follow our YouTube channel. Please like the video, share it with your friends, your community. The only way that I can keep giving you all free, exciting podcast episodes is because of the reach of the podcast. So, rating us, reviewing us, it really, really does help. Also, shout out to Sean, our intern, who, if you see the cover art, you see the edits of the podcast, that's all Sean. So, amazing work by Sean. So, I hope you all enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room podcast. I'm so excited to be joined with an author who I just know you're all going to gush over when you hear me read his exciting bio. So, Christian Pan is a bisexual writer of original and customized erotic fiction. He's published over 85 short stories in English, Spanish, French, 75 book reviews, and interviews on his blog, Dirty Words. He was a 2022 finalist for the Golden Pigtail Rookie Smut Star, which I think just evokes a lot of imagery there. I don't know. It sounds like an erotic fairy tale of sorts, like Goldilocks, but proceeding. His previous books are On Freedom, Eagle Eye, At the End of the World, and City of Desire. His story, Sweet Six, appears in the erotic anthology Seasons Teasings, a sexy holiday collection, edited by Olivia Lawless. Another excellent name and full of puns. He lives in New York City and he is joining me here. Welcome, Christian, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Great to be here.
So I have to ask first, which is just as our first official erotica writer guest, how did you get into this? Like, where did this journey with erotica start for you?
Yeah. Um, well, I often tell people that it took a global pandemic to make me into an erotic writer. Um, so in 2020, my life was primarily in performing arts and doing tours and performances related to contemporary dance mostly, as well as some live theater. And of course, all of that shut down. And unlike maybe some other professions, it's not like a lot of that money came back. So there was a lot of stress and unpredictability because within a few weeks, 75% of my income was just gone. And there's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, like what is going on? What do I do? And so someone suggested, well, why don't you take this writing workshop with Tim Cummings? And Tim and I knew each other from when we were undergrads. And this was a remote class. And I thought, great. I've always wanted to write. I never could finish anything, but now's my chance. I'm going to really focus and use this outlet. And as I started submitting pages week to week, all of the feedback I got was, "Oh, this is such physical, sensual writing. You should really become a author of erotica." And I have to say, I was so offended. I was like, erotica? That's such a cheap, silly genre. I'm writing serious literature. Like I had such a snob attitude. And then I took a second workshop with Tim, but with different classmates, submitted more pages, different project, same feedback. "Oh, this is so great. You should write erotica." And then I went, okay, wait a minute. This must be some kind of a sign that I should take this seriously and like change my perspective. Maybe the problem's in my attitude. So I started reading other works of erotic fiction, not with any kind of um, thorough plan, just like whatever's popular and out there. And I was like, this is kind of bad. Like it's not that well written. It seems like the stories are a little thin. There's not much character or story. I guess I felt like I was really surprised that it seemed like just about what they call one-handed reads. And I thought, I want to try and find a way to write something more, and especially to write things that I don't see already, which is mostly about bisexual people. I thought, well, if I'm not reading it, maybe I need to be the one to write it. And I thought, well, this pandemic, it's not going to go on forever. It's just like 3 more months, right? Well, that was, almost 5 years ago, and I've been writing ever since, and it's become this surprisingly this much more central part of my life. Um, I do it part time. I have other things I do too, but I really love it. It's become a very important um, part of my day just to get up and write at my desk and try to find out what I want to write about. I've met so many wonderful people through this activity that initially started as kind of a casual, uh, capricious lark. It's now become like a more of a committed mission because I think like sticking with it for some time, it makes me think, why am I doing this? Why is this so important to
Mm.
me? Why is this writing so important for me now? What am I trying to explore through language, through my imagination? And also learning that there's actually a lot of really talented writers working within the erotic literature zone. Maybe in a way it's good that I didn't see too many of them when I was just starting out because I might have been intimidated and thought, I can't do this. There's already all these talented people out there.
Mhm.
Um, but the ones I've gotten to know and meet, and in some cases collaborate with since, they're just doing some super exciting things. So I feel like I'm just figuring out where I am and all that. I feel like there's a lot of things I still want to write. So I feel like that's a good sign for me of that this is still a passion. It's still a joy, and I'm able to make some money at it. So I'm not losing money when I do it. I make a little bit of profits, not full
Mhm.
time. I feel like it's definitely paying for itself and then some. So I feel like it's a win-win on a lot of different levels.
Well, I'm so happy you found your passion, and I can tell that you really just light up when you talk about your writing. And I'm curious, Christian, like for the general public out there, I feel like when you say you're an erotic writer, they immediately think of 50 Shades of Grey, but it's like, there's much more nuances, right? Like I know there are really famous writers who also wrote erotica, like Edith Wharton actually has a piece, Anne Rice, that Sleeping Beauty book,
Right.
uh, you know, and classic literature itself, the Odyssey, the Iliad, is full of erotic pulses. But like for you, what's the difference between being an erotic writer and writing sex scenes?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's interesting you mentioned some of those other famous writers like Edith Wharton or Homer, because there's a there is a kind of historical and political history of erotic writing that's actually created a lot of space to write anything. So I'm thinking of James Joyce's Ulysses was credited as
Mm,
pornographic. It's now considered one of the greatest novels ever in the English language. Um, Allen Ginsberg's Howl, considered profane and obscene and pornographic, now opened up the space for more kind of art that pushes the boundaries of what is possible within the medium, not just about sex or queer sex or explicit sex. Um, and I think in recent times, we've moved away from that conversation about is art pornographic? Is art just art? And
mm,
where we can explore these kinds of things, what is the difference between that and pornography or smut, which tends to be considered a lower grade of quality? Like it's just to get you off. It's not
mm,
really about story, dialogue. It's just about like, give you an orgasm, titillate and arouse. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. I
mm,
think um, the United States, especially right now, has always had a very challenging relationship to the body,
mm,
the aging body, the queer body, the desiring body, or just desire in general. So there's a lot of contradictory kind of rhetoric and
mm,
legislation around it. And it seems to manifest in these strange ways where there can be, on the one hand, all this stripping of women's reproductive rights, all this alarm and panic around just trans people existing, but then this kind of laissez faire attitude of anything goes when it comes to some social media platforms, which I feel like are just way more explicit than anything that I do. But I'm considered this dangerous force because I write
mm,
bisexual erotic literature. So I feel like when I talk to someone for the first time and they say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Well, I write bisexual centered erotic fiction." They're like, I think their initial thought is that it's just smutty, poorly written, um, not really of value, not really
mm,
substantial, and just some kind of dilettante like literature. It's not like a real novel, whatever that is. Like, it's not like
mm,
something super important, which I feel like genre fiction has always been regulated in the public mind and by critics as this substandard thing, whether it's horror, whether it's science fiction, whether it's erotica. It's like, well, it's not real, like, and usually that means something that has more so-called literary value.
mm.
Um,
And a very straight white male approach.
and often a very, the identity politics around it tends to be, oh, you mean like a white male cisgender upper class highly educated English speaking person, like that's literary. So I feel like there's this weird kind of conversation around it rather than looking at the work itself. And I feel like it's true in my work. I like being explicit. I do think sex is political, and I think especially queer sex and
Mm,
bisexual sex is political. But I also want my characters to have inner life, thoughts, feelings. I don't want them to be perfect. There's a lot of tropes in erotic fiction, like the millionaire with the private helicopter and the private estate on, I don't know, Martha's Vineyard, and then they just have a dungeon to play and explore their fantasies. And I'm like, well, I don't really relate to that. Maybe that's cool because it's utopian. It's like a world where money is not an issue, bias is not an issue. You can just go and just explore your
yeah.
fantasy, your heart's delight. But
It's
I
the
like
fantasy world. Like that to me is the 50 Shades of Grey. Like we're gonna lock you in the penthouse and
totally
like we have all the resources to fulfill whatever you desire.
exactly, and I prefer to ground it in more of a, I guess, a familiar realism of people right now living in cities. Some of them are divorced, some of them go to therapy, some have recovery from addiction, some have kids, some have feelings of jealousy, some have erectile dysfunction, like just real
Mm,
people. I feel like
yeah.
I feel like there's such an opportunity to explore these things and more within the realm of erotica, but there's, of course, tensions within what you're allowed to write or should write um, within erotic fiction. What kinds of trigger warnings you should give your readers? Should you give trigger warnings at all? Which things are going to take someone out of their arousal? It's a very interesting dynamic. I had one book of mine called Wilding, which begins with someone overhears a woman in an airport watching a very pro-life video on YouTube on their phone, and they get into an argument about it. And one of the criticisms by someone was, "Oh, that's it's too political. You really you're not allowed to do that." And I'm like, "Says who?" Like, also, it's very privileged to think that any literature, especially right now, that relates to sex, can be apolitical. But also, I feel like with so much going on that is related to the body and human sexuality and identity, to just try to remove it feels like a not the kind of literature that I'm interested in right now.
Well, and I think it's so interesting because, like to plug, the book that I've had the pleasure of reading, Far From Olympus, you do have note while this book is entirely a work of fiction, some of its scenes may be uncomfortable for some readers.
Yeah.
And I was curious, how do you feel about the similarities between, say, what you're doing and like highbrow, or I'll say like art house erotica film, and like the difference that that faces compared to, say, um like I'll pull a film as an example. So like the difference between Linda Lovelace's Deep Throat and then like Brokeback Mountain, or things that might have intense sexual scenes, or even Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
um you know, so do you feel that there are similarities between the visual and the literary?
Yes. I mean, I think they're both. I think the advantage of fiction or literature is that you can get inside the minds of your characters. And that's, I think, a wonderful opportunity to show hesitation, doubt, fear, desire, conflict, which might be implied or inferred when you see behavior on screen. I mean, I guess some films use voiceover as a way to um, kind of shortcut that. But I think generally film is like you're depicting characters in action. And I think
Mhm.
also there's a agreement of these are actual human beings portraying characters. So there's a whole other level of consent and representation and access and agency
Mm.
and money, which I feel like is collapsed when people discuss this from a legislative point of view with fiction or with illustration or with drawings. And I'm like, but there's no actual people in my fiction. They do not exist. They are all made up.
Yeah.
Whereas in a
Yeah.
film, it's like those are actual performers. So do they want to do that? What were the conditions where this was made? What's the access to see it? What's the distribution? There's all these other questions that arise because you're collaborating with other people. Um, but some people would have discussions with Far From Olympus about how it's not consensual because you're dealing with centaurs and satyrs and humans, and it's like it's just too far from other people who work
Mm.
in erotic art. And I thought, but it's fiction, like it's not real. And also, if this is off limits, why is one of the biggest, most famous tropes like humans, especially women, going up in a spaceship with a giant tentacled creature? I mean,
Oh yeah.
where's the consent possible with this thing, which is a
Yeah.
giant squid when you're in outer space and can't go? I mean, how do you
Yeah.
negotiate? There's no
Or
power.
Alien, having like an alien birthed within you in that horror
Yeah,
film, and it like bursting out from the appendix.
totally. So I feel like it's kind of the discussion seems to be inconsistent, and it also I feel like it avoids the fact that it's actually fiction And the responsibility of determining that should be on the reader. But I think others disagree
Mm.
with me and say, no, 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 it should be on the writer. The writer should self censor and warn and make sure nothing they write is offensive to anyone ever. And I'm like, how is that even possible? And also, who decides how that's possible? Um, I
But
had
it
a,
is. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, and far from Olympus, what I found so interesting is like the elements of centaurs having, sexual romantic times with the humans is such a foundation for mythology. Like Zeus, you know, and Zeus's transgressions and even assault. You could read it as that with, Leda and the Swan, or there's so many examples. But it is interesting, like in the realm of literature, there's a lot of those boundaries broken. But when it comes to film, it would be very rare to see that outside of like a hardcore, something that someone's in a costume or, like it's not really going to make the Hollywood film. Like Wicked is a good example because Wicked, which I've interviewed Gregory Maguire. I love the novel
oh,
and the
wow.
series,
Yeah,
but there is a scene of like bestial relations, and it's very jarring for those who read Wicked and think it's going to be a family-friendly novel. And it's like, no, he's writing for adults, and it's like you said, Christian, it's in the realm of fantasy, but they would never touch that in the musical. Like they're
right.
not putting that into the musical or the film.
Yeah. And I think it's almost like if there's so many hoops to jump through to even find my work that is 18 plus and designed for adults, I'm assuming the reader can determine fact from fiction and that know that this is a fantasy. On the other hand, I think we're living in a time where a lot of adults cannot differentiate fact from fiction. And that's why we're in this horror show of 2025. So there's a lot of, and then what to do with all that? Do I try to um, eliminate any kind of rough edges to the stories I want to tell in the hopes that somehow that will increase my likelihood of getting more success, more readership, but at what cost? Or
Mm.
do I just write the stories I'm interested in? Maybe that will make my market and readership smaller, but I'm like, yes, but this is what I'm interested in. And it reminds me of being an actor when I was young, so many casting directors and producers would say, you have to get whatever job pays because it's all
Hmm.
about the money. And that's it. So, by that standard, doing a toothpaste commercial that has a national distribution is better than working at the public theater and doing Shakespeare in the Park, I guess.
Mm.
Or doing like a huge movie, even if the movie is total garbage, the paycheck is good, therefore it's good. But if doing some
Mm.
small new play with minimum wage, whatever, that's just not really a gig. And I just feel like I don't think every actor aspires to Broadway, nor should they. I feel like the realm of art making is very wide, very roomy, and there's off Broadway, there's regional theater, there's experimental theater, there's stuff that happens on rooftops, in parking
Oh
lots.
yeah.
There's so much
Yeah.
stuff, but I feel like in our social media culture, it's almost like if you're not playing to like 5 million people, you just are not trying, you're not working hard enough, and it becomes more about just getting eyeballs on the post
Mm.
rather than reading the thing that the post is meant to promote. And I'm just like, I don't think that benefits actual creators. I think that's just benefiting social media tech bros. I think the real
Hmm.
thing is like take a step back. What do you want to write? Get into that. And if it's a smaller readership, okay. But I think anyone who says, here's the way to success, we know from films, from theater, from books, a lot of them don't know at the time what's going to be a hit. And a lot of things that are hits, rarely are they planned. I mean, so many things,
Yes.
this is going to be a blockbuster. And then they spend $450 million, totally tanks. And they're like, what? what happened? And then something else that makes 25 grand to make, like Blair Witch Project, suddenly
Yeah.
is this huge
Yeah.
success. A
Or
million.
Halloween. Halloween
Halloween, that
was
John
a
Carpenter. I
that
mean,
was a sleeper.
totally.
Yeah.
There's so many examples of like, we're just kind of shooting in the dark. So if we're going to be that unknown, why not just write something that is actually meaningful to you and actually something you care about? Because that's your legacy. That's who you are. It's your
And
work.
it's authentic, right, Christian? Like a Halloween is an interesting example because you have Jamie Lee Curtis, whose mother was in Psycho,
Yeah.
and like Jamie Lee Curtis did it because of the project. And
Yeah.
it's like her legacy kind of it was ready to be written, but like she wasn't attaching herself to the project because of clout. And I think like that's a really you can tell she wanted to be in that project. And it's kind of like Shakespeare in the Park, the way that they're now getting A-list actors. They want to be doing Shakespeare, like Sandra Oh or Lupita Nyong'o. Like these are trained classic actors.
Yes.
And I mean, I guess at the same time, like, what do you think though when people can't get tickets for Twelfth Night because of the A-listers? Like the way that Broadway has kind of now almost inverted where tickets are so high because Hollywood actors are going to the stage. The spring season is here, which means there's a new issue of the Gay and Lesbian Review called Victorian Times, all about my favorite period of literature, the 19th century. And you'll see a rugged Walt Whitman on the cover and the dandy Oscar Wilde. Well, guess what? My first article is now published in the Gay and Lesbian Review called Once Upon a Time in Camden. It's the intro to my book, which looks into their queer literary relationship, but also Whitman and Wilde's homoerotic poetics, and specifically what Whitman does with male same sex desire before the category of homosexuality even existed. Like, how did he even express this in his poetry? Well, you'll have to read my book to find out. Book coming soon. If you know of a publisher, let me know. I'm shopping around right now. But this Victorian issue is so special with the Gay and Lesbian Review. There's articles on Dr. Jekyll and Victor Frankenstein. I'm about to see The Bride, which I can't wait to see. And right, Guillermo del Toro's new Frankenstein is all the rage. There's an article on Monte Cristo's Women in Love, Tchaikovsky's Men. I love Tchaikovsky's ballet. I'm particularly an admirer of The Sleeping Beauty, one on Captain Cobb. There's film and TV shows reviewed like Heated Rivalry, Boots, Kiss of the Spider Woman, which, if you don't know, I had an episode with Jeremy Fox from the Gay and Lesbian Review, the managing editor, and Colin Carmen and Joseph Federico, and we talked all about Heated Rivalry. You have to listen to it. And Kiss of the Spider Woman, I keep recommending to everyone. It is an astounding film. Boots, I actually had the creator Greg Cope White on the podcast too. You'll have to listen to his interview. Also, if you haven't heard our episode on the kink issue of the magazine, it's really, really interesting. And the ethnography one. And yes, there will be an episode soon about the Victorian issue. So get your hands on the Gay and Lesbian Review. The digital subscription is really easy to get, glreview.org. The print subscription also, head on over to the website, click subscribe, use the promo code ITBR choice. You get a free issue of the magazine. Choose the Victorian issue, will you? So head to their Instagram, their TikTok. I love the Gay and Lesbian Review. I get so many book recommendations, TV show, film recommendations. One of the films that I can't wait to watch is in this issue. I want to say it's pronounced Pillion or Pillion. I think I made it French there with Alexander Skarsgård. So enjoy your reading, everyone. And if you're reading the Gay and Lesbian Review, please reach out to me. I want to let them know, that you all listening to this podcast are reading their magazine. Now that the spring semester is here, I am so excited to let you all know about a publisher an independent publisher that's celebrating 40 years of great books called Broadview Press. I love Broadview Press. I have so many of their editions of classic literature like Wuthering Heights, which is coming out soon, and it's our book club choice. And they have so many academic books for instructors and for students and the general public. So I've had so many exciting guests on, from guests talking about The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, guests talking about vampire literature, horror literature. I'm looking at you, Jeffrey Andrew Weinstock, whose book actually just came out called Horror Theory. Look it up. And I cannot wait because I have two exciting guests coming on soon. And I've recorded their episodes, so I know that it's going to be such an interesting conversation. The first is Rachel Tukolsky, who wrote a book called Writing on Fire, a fierce yet friendly guide to writing humanities essays in college. I've used excerpts of it for my Writing 2 course at Montclair. It has gone over so well. I just love what Rachel does. And we get into this in our episode about this metaphor about writing on fire, like how that's a great way to think about free flowing, brainstorming, creative ideas, and getting into that flow state, which, as Rachel explains, happens not just in writing, but in many other avenues. And then the other guest that I have on is David Starkey, who wrote a book called Academic Writing Now, a brief guide for busy students. It is designed to cover the basics of a college writing course in a concise, student friendly format. Each chapter concentrates on a crucial element of composing an academic essay and is capable of being read in a single sitting, which, for a generation, myself included, I think all of us now, just consumed by digital media or just this attention grabbing technology, reading in a single sitting is definitely a plus. So head to Broadview Press, use the promo code Ivory Tower, and you'll get 20% off every single book in their collection. There's also a really cool digital library collection they have. So if you're a librarian, take a look at that. Message me. If you're a librarian, I'd be happy to show you what that new collection looks like. And I hope you all enjoy your reading.
Yes. I mean, I think right now, since I first moved to New York 35 years ago, it's definitely more about commercial and financial success for all or most cultural products. So with theater, you have Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal doing Othello. It's the highest ticket price in the history of Broadway, something like $900 for those tickets when it was on.
Yeah,
Who
no.
can afford that? And also, what is that event except to say, I got wealth, I'm going to see Othello. So it's more about the status rather than I'm seeing two actors really do something novel with Othello. I think there's also an audience that loves the downtown, cool,
Yeah.
underground thing, whatever that is. The challenge with a Wooster Group or a Steppenwolf or a Punch Drunk is that you don't know when you start those companies that it's going to be this huge influence 40, 50 years later. You're just a bunch of young kids trying to make something happen. And I think
Yeah.
that energy is really challenging because it's a total investment in yourself without any financial expectation. It's just, I want to make something cool. And maybe in 20 years we'll break even or make a profit, but who knows? Whereas I think now creative people are saying, well, I got to make money in 6 months. And I'm like, really? I mean, good luck with that. But statistically,
Yeah.
the average that a creator makes per year is something like $1,200. And that's spending 40 hours full time a week doing it. And I'm like, who can afford that? That's $100 a month. I mean, unless you have someone supporting your life or you have a lot of wealth from somewhere, like that's not a sustainable career if you put that on a as a number one. And I think I don't know when this expectation of like full-time writing as a standard became normalized, but other art forms don't have that expectation. I think of poetry. No one is
Mm.
releasing a volume of poetry thinking they're going to pay for a new house. They're just, but it doesn't mean that that financial limitation means that poetry is dead or not worthwhile to make. Same with jazz music. There's no shame in being like, yes, I teach music at these two schools and I'm playing at the Village Vanguard. It's not like, well, why aren't you at Madison Square Garden? I mean, what kind of lame musician are you? It's like, I'm one of the best, I'm one of the best jazz musicians alive. Who are you? I mean, it just, but I feel like there's this strange fusion of money and art, being a creative. And I think that's like, I'm totally against that. I feel like, be an artist, be a writer,
Mm.
make something that's worth something. Don't get so caught up in reverse engineering it from trying to do the
Mm.
7 steps to social media success in 7 weeks, and then I'm going to get to this. And I'm like, then you're not
It
writing.
doesn't it
You're just
doesn't happen that way. No.
then you're just like a second class influencer or something. Like, what are you writing? Write something really good.
Yeah, and I think Christian, this is so interesting because I think Shakespeare in the Park is doing it right in the sense that you have a mix of like those who are amplified celebrities who have the acting chops, of course, but you also do have those who are on the circuit of theater who are with them. So it's like a blending, and I think like that is a wonderful recipe when you get like more unknown actors with the A-listers, so then you can amplify the unknown actors.
For sure.
Um, but I loved Nicole Scherzinger in Sunset Boulevard. Um, but I was gonna try to see her Carnegie Hall concert, and her tickets started at 150, and I was like, whoa. I'm
Yeah.
like, there's not even like a $60 ticket. It's like it's just very interesting to see, and I'm not faulting her, like, right, get your money, Nicole. But I do think it's just interesting how someone will become known in the theater like for a role, and then all of a sudden now in our culture it's like the status you said. It's like, oh, we're gonna now start at this level of you paying this amount of money. Or off-Broadway shows now starting at $80 a ticket,
Yeah.
which never
Yeah.
ever happened 10 years ago.
Well, and also the landscape is very different than 10 years ago. I mean, so many wonderful theaters, festivals, all gone. So many graduate programs, conservatories, gone. Residency centers, gone. Funding for the arts, shrinking. AI, rising. Um,
Mm.
like if you do get a TV series, fewer episodes, fewer writers, higher pay, but now more competitive. So it's a very difficult landscape. And with
Yeah.
writers, I mean, we're all, I would say, busting our backs as best we can to try and make stuff and make it happen so that not only writing it, but getting out to the world. And regardless of our financial goals or artistic goals, I think every writer wants readers. I mean, we
Mm.
just want to have people become aware of our stuff and enjoy it. But now um, our work is being like illegally scraped for an industry, a new technology that has billions of dollars being pumped into it. And we're just like, well, wait a minute, like, we're not getting a cut of that. We're not getting any benefits from that. In fact, we're now having our work used against us to educate and, I guess, um, program a competitor that's non-human that will use our
Mm.
language, use our storytelling, use our work against us. And I mean, it's very dystopian. So it feels like, how
Yeah.
can we just, because it seems like we're now bifurcated between super wealthy people or you're working but you're making no money and you're broke. There's nothing in between. There's no reasonable salary for a writer, an actor, a teacher, a nurse, a cop, a firefighter. It's all just like, well, you better get a side hustle, like as if overworking is somehow glamorous. It's like, I don't want to do a side
Mhm.
hustle. I want you to pay me like a goddamn real wage so I can live in the place where I'm doing the job for you. But it seems like there's been so much change in the last 35, 40 years that
Mm.
it was actually easier to make a living in many of these professions than it is now. So to go back to the high ticket prices, I feel like that's also a lack of earnings from the community where those theaters are happening. Like not only their ticket price is so high, but also people who love theater are like, I can't go. I just can't afford it. So, and then that's only a temporary solution that will only cause another theater to eliminate or just only have George Clooney and Denzel Washington and other huge names
Yeah.
in theaters. And then where are other actors who are not George Clooney, who are not Denzel Washington? Where do they go? Where do they
Yeah.
work?
But I do want to shout out the Mechanicals, which I know Alexis, the director of that. They put on stage readings, um, and sometimes full productions of Shakespeare, and it's like $20. And they go to like coffee houses in Brooklyn, or I think it's also amazing to see now because of necessity, but it's like a renaissance of, well, we're going to go where the people are and we're going to put on the production in the streets. And it's like, another good company that does that is Bedlam and Red Bull Theater. I don't know if Red Bull's still around, but um,
Bedlam.
they
Yeah.
are. Bedlam is. Okay. But I I'm also trying to get tickets. We'll see, cross fingers. Talk about I'm going to try to interview, the creator, at least the actors of Prince Faggot, which has become like all the buzz now. But again, those tickets are starting to rise. But I do think a show like that is interesting because actors do like bare their bodies, like are nude in a lot of theatrical productions. And it's, you know, on the theater, it's an artistic expression, right? Like it makes sense, like in literature, it makes sense with the characters. It's
For sure.
might be that show, it might be even I know Sex and the City has a scene where Samantha's boyfriend is like in the buff in his birthday suit. Queer as Folk does that too.
For sure.
And it's so interesting because I feel like theater does allow for more of that. Well, Take Me Out was a good example until like they leaked the photos. So now everyone has to put their phones in a pouch, which they're doing for Prince Faggot. So we'll see how that works. But I think it's interesting, like why in theater, I won't say it's like a mainstream standard, but like there is that artistic sense. But when it comes to like film, you really see it, I feel, more like the ingenues, like an Alicia Silverstone or American Beauty. Like a lot of young women, when they start their career, there is a lot of sexualization of them and like the older male character who becomes obsessed with them. And it's almost like I was saying to my fiance, is this a rite of passage? Like the women have to do this to break into the industry? Because it doesn't seem like the men are on the same trajectory in film.
That's a very good point. I mean, I don't know of a equivalent to the Best Actress winner from Anora of a young man who had to be a sex worker or a pole dancer, and then all of this praise and gushing. It seems like there is at least in mainstream Hollywood, there is this kind of adoration of women being nude on camera, that is so brave. I'm thinking of Demi Moore in The Substance, but
Mm, mm.
I feel like, you know, Emma Thompson in Good Luck to You, Leo Grand is such a, in my opinion, much more fascinating and richly nuanced story about women and aging bodies and sexuality, and especially fulfilling desire with another man, a younger man. It seems it's implied from the film, maybe a queer man. Like it's just a very interesting dynamic that I feel like does not get as much attention. And then it becomes about that publicity machine. Like how much
Yes.
are
That's what I
you
was going to say with the men. It's the publicity, like a Magic Mike. Can you believe these Channing
exactly
Tatum is a stripper in this? Like it's the appeal of something out of the norm for
for,
the guy to do it.
for sure? And I think, the in some ways, like that kind of conversation around the movie or around the book, I think is almost like a substitute for the movie or the book. Like people might not
Mm.
even read the book, but they know the conversation around it, and then that gives a kind of satisfaction because we're all in a hurry. We don't have time to read books anymore. I mean, it's like kind of a weird like, yeah, but read the book and see what you think. Like rather than just take someone else's opinion for it, like go into learning it, learning your own opinion from your own experience of reading it or encountering the art thing.
But you're right. America is such a backward society when it comes to sexuality and expression. Like, at the one hand, there's, oh, don't talk about it. But at the other hand, they're like the largest consumers of porn. They're, amplifying sex tape scandals. Like, that's how Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian, like, it's publicity stunts sometimes, allegedly. And I just think it's fascinating. Like, what is this? It's this dichotomy. Like, why is it so um contradictory? Like, is it still that puritanical, like, we're gonna be ashamed of the act, but we all know everyone is thinking and doing it.
Yeah,
It's just like a very voyeuristic, almost rear window approach of, oh, I know everyone's doing it, but we gotta hide it. Like, make sure you don't talk about it.
yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, I think about the kind of public shaming around women who do OnlyFans. Like, how can you believe this woman has got an OnlyFans page to earn money? And I think, well, why isn't her full-time job paying her enough just in the first place so that
exactly.
she doesn't have to go on OnlyFans? I mean, if she wants to, she can, but it seems like there's a lot of economic driven choice making, and that sex, like other vices, sells. It's like a kind of constant source of income. But I think, in going back to Greek mythology and Far from Olympus, it could be like Apollonian and Dionysian, because I think there's this
Mm.
desire to like keep everything in order, stay obedient, stay quiet, follow the rules. And that's maybe fine for some people, but I think the Dionysian energy of like sexuality, creativity, it's a it's just like the Bacchae. It's like Dionysus
Yes.
will not be contained. It's just going to break free and destroy anything that tries to hem it in. And I
Yeah.
think,
Those maenads are gonna tear apart.
yeah,
They're very, I don't know if you saw the film Weapons, but I was thinking of,
I saw it on Monday. Yeah,
yes, I was thinking of like Dionysian festivals, and I was
yeah,
thinking also of Hansel and Gretel, of
yeah,
like, the children need to be, their energy has to be taken.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think especially that image of the kids just running away in the night, like where are they going? It's like the women running into the forest for these bacchanals that are kind of in secret and like what's going on up there. But I feel like that kind of energy, that kind of freedom is something that, because I think sexuality and creativity are just this from the same well. And I think that's just dangerous. I mean, Toni Morrison has written about this. It's like art is dangerous. It's
Mm.
confrontational. It challenges us. It's not entertainment. It's not um, just a diversion. It's really trying to provoke and to make us think about things, hopefully in a new way.
Mm.
And I think with erotic literature, there's an opportunity to do that. I mean, I think for me as a bisexual male, there's not a lot of bisexual men in literature, period. I mean, if there is a bisexual woman, usually they're not identifying as bisexual. Their bisexuality is seen as just an extension of their heterosexuality, which is only for a kind of titillation prelude for a male or a phallus to enter the scene. But
Mm.
in terms of
Mm.
like bisexual people who often have higher rates of poverty, higher rates of addiction, higher rates of anorexia, bulimia, and eating disorders, higher rates of mental health challenges than gay or straight peers. It just seems like where is this literature, particularly from the LGBTQ community? And it feels like it's more invisible because it's not considered like a real identity. It's just a transitional identity. You're not
Yeah.
really bisexual unless you're having like orgies with lots of people all day long. And it's like, so if you're just in a same sex or opposite sex relationship, you're not really bisexual. You're just straight. Or I mean, it just gets
Yeah.
into, I think, a lot of
Or
questions that
yeah.
people don't want to like answer because they don't fit into that this or that binary.
Yeah, no, and exactly. It's like, or is it gonna be the stereotype of the monstrous bisexual, like the talented Mr. Ripley or Carol, or are you going to have like the Predator? Uh, like there's
Right.
a lot of Hollywood narratives where if a character, American Psycho in a way,
Right.
where it's almost, oh, you got to be afraid because, you know, you don't know their identity's not fixed
Right.
and like we just don't have enough mass narratives that humanize the
Yes.
bisexual community and like well I mean at the end of the day my student actually said Christian yesterday to me like wait oh The Color Purple is a queer novel and it's like yes it is
Yeah.
and that story is very queer and kind of outside of identity categories in a way
Yeah.
but it's not really talked about as a queer novel on the
Yeah.
mainstream level.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's the thing is it gets like these erasures happen. The writers aren't erasing it, but you know, Hollywood is what is given to the masses, and Hollywood loves to erase any type of queer coding. Like I'm sure you've seen the Celluloid Closet
Oh
documentary.
yeah. You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. And I remember in that documentary, I forget which Roman emperor. There's a Roman film, like, Hollywood film where there was a deleted scene and it was a sexual interaction between the emperor and his manservant, and Hollywood got rid of it. Like it was there, but these scenes, I wish
yeah.
they just released like deleted scenes because I feel like that's where all these stories are living in the
Yeah.
queer community.
Welcome to Severed, a podcast week dropping new episodes every Monday. Severed True Crime and Severed Paranormal episodes deep dive into murder, mysteries, and the otherworldly in a concise format. A 7-minute story to frame the case with thoughtful analysis and our usual banter.
We sometimes find the lighter side of darker cases. We offer 3 spin-off shows, Severed Strange Stories, Severed Haunted You, and Severed Serial Killers that highlight the unusual to lighthearted topics from the digital dumpsters of true crime, haunted universities, and the minds of madness like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer.
We are your co-hosts. I'm Harry Chambers.
And I'm Drew Hudson. Listen on all major podcast platforms, including Rogue Media Network and Radio Garden State. Follow us on Instagram at severed_podcast.
Are you a fan of classic Hollywood movies?
Are you a fan of queer cinema?
Then do we have the podcast for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Garcia.
And I'm Luke Delmar.
And we are your hosts of That Old Gay Classic Cinema, where we take a look at some of the greatest films of all time and analyze them through a queer theoretical lens.
Let's be honest. LGBTQIA plus people have been a part of Hollywood since its inception, and this podcast celebrates those artists and entertainers of yesteryear while also taking a closer look at the queer-coded characters and stories in classic Hollywood films long before queer representation entered the mainstream.
So follow us down the road of classic cinema as we give you a guide to some of the films that touched our hearts, brains, and even gave us courage to be ourselves.
You can listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
All right, listeners, we're ready for our close-up.
Yeah. And there was one in the original draft of Bonnie and Clyde, there was going to be a same-sex scene that would make some of the characters like this bisexual gesture, but they were like, that's too much. We're going to cut that out. There was also, I think, in Wild Palms with Matt Dillon and Kevin Bacon and Denise Richards and the woman from Scream, they're going to have
Oh,
Um,
yes, yes. Wild Things.
Wild Things. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wild Things was they were going to have a scene between Dylan and Bacon too, and they thought, no, that's too much. Just keep it like heterosexual between men and women, and then same sex between the two women. But the two men can't do that. That's just a bridge too far. So it becomes like, okay, so what is the? There's still something very unnerving, I guess, about the thought
yeah.
of a man who can be with both men and women, I guess. And it seems, in my um, sense, it goes back to the AIDS epidemic because there was a
Mm.
view, which I think some people still have, that all the disease and pollution is in the gay community and that bisexuals are bringing it and infecting it to the normal straight community. So then you can't trust bi people, especially bi men,
Mm.
because they're kind of like, you know, double agents. They're not who they seem to be.
Mm.
It's like this they're like werewolves. They look fine, but then they can just become dangerous at a
Yeah.
moment's notice.
It's like the pathology of the down low man. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which I am curious, like with what you do with Far From Olympus, I think is so powerful because you give voice to like the grayness or just the humanization of these mythological
Mm.
creatures, humans that like usually we see that there's like I would say a or not a binary, but there's like the polar opposites in film. There's either like the hardcore action films like Troy, Gladiator with the Roman narrative, and like sex. Maybe there's going to be some heterosexual sex, but like never are they going to talk about men with men or never women with women, even though that did happen. But, women are already like subjugated in Greek and Roman communities. But then on the other side, it's like, oh, the fantasy of the bathhouse porn. So it's
Right.
like,
Right.
where's the middle? Like, where's the actual truth of these stories? And it's like
Yeah,
what you've done. And someone else I have to bring up is Mary Renault. I've loved The Persian Boy. I've wanted The Persian Boy to be made into a movie for like so
yeah,
long.
yeah,
And it's like that is why is no one funding that? And it's like I think what you said, Christian, it's risky. It's something that they don't want to put their money behind.
for sure. And I think the Greek mythology, I mean, I go back to those stories because they're so intense and complicated and disturbing and unsettling. Like then they're timeless. And I think for millennia, people have found them a source of inspiration and a source of wonderment, a source of bewilderment. And I feel like I can't think of another way to write a story based on that source without it being contradictory. So it's like if we have these half human, half animal beings, I feel like
Mhm.
that's a perfect metaphor to explore these things about the complications of sexuality and the erotic imagination. So that's why it's like, yeah, let's have centaurs with each other, centaurs with same sex centaurs, but other opposite sex centaurs and humans, and that it's all like really messed up. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
aren't these Greek myths kind of messed up? I mean, you have Oedipus, you have Agamemnon, you
Oh
have
yeah.
Zeus, you have Dionysus, you have so much, it's already there. But I feel like when we want to maybe like sanitize them and make them more easily digestible. And I'm like, no, I want it to catch in our throats. It's really much
Yes.
more interesting.
Yeah, like I was just trying to rewatch Once Upon a Time, trying. And I have to stop watching it because I'm sorry. I loved it when it came out, but now rewatching, I'm like, oh, this soap opera narrative is just not working well. But I think it's also because it was a Disney project. It's on ABC. They're trying to appeal to too many ages, in my opinion. And like, instead of getting the grittiness of the Brothers Grimm tales and you know, right? There's violence, there's morals about losing your virginity. Like that's Rapunzel, really, and Red Riding Hood. But like instead of doing that, it just like really dilutes the narrative. And it's something where I respect the realm of literature because these stories, this is where they exist. And I think it's why, we need to amplify writers like you, Christian, writers who are giving voice to this. And I think it's why, like a Gregory Maguire, why he really took off because I remember reading his Snow White tale, well, novel Mirror Mirror, and he goes really in depth with the Renaissance and it's really like gritty and, you know, it's not a manicure, it's like nails behind the finger. And I think it's good to continue to talk to others about these texts. Like we have to do justice of just spreading around. And like you said, writers are so giving, they're kind, and they usually reach out to their readers.
Oh yeah,
Where if you try to reach a lot of A-list actors, they're behind a publicity paywall.
yeah.
Like,
That's the
good
problem.
luck. Good
Yeah,
luck.
that's the quest. Yeah, and I think the Brothers Grimm is another great example too. I mean, I think about Hansel and Gretel, how they were abandoned purposefully by their parental guardians in the woods,
Yeah.
and then they find a witch who wants to eat them. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
these are
like
not. And then it's like, okay, good night. Turn off the lights and let your kids sleep alone in the. It's like these
yeah.
are warnings about this is the world. We're going to tell you the truth of things through
Yep.
this metaphor of this story about these two kids in a forest and a witch and a candy house. And I think that's all really. I like those kinds of stories tremendously. I feel like they treat me like an adult who can handle nuance and say, yes, the world is dangerous, it's scary, and it also contains pleasure, it contains fellowship and camaraderie, it contains struggle, it contains opportunity all at once, not just
Yes.
one or the other. It's like it's all there and it's very confusing. And how can we find a narrative or an image or a story that kind of does its best to put it all in there. And I feel like that is very arousing, like because
Yeah.
it jars me out of what because I think if I watch a porn film, I kind of know where it's going to go, and it's like
Yeah.
not a lot of surprises. But if I see an erotic art film, I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Like they're
Mhm.
doing things I don't expect. They're maybe trying things that I think are a little unusual. There's maybe themes or ideas that are included in the piece that are intended I feel like there's like an intelligent author trying to say, no, no,
Mhm.
no, think about this. Like use your brain and your body, like not just one or the other. So,
No, I
um,
agree. And I think that even though it might not be, award worthy, I love the Odyssey TV film with Bernadette Peters and Vanessa Williams because it actually does not hide from like, Cersei wanting to turn the men into pigs, right? Is that her
yeah,
mission? Yeah. So like that is our precursor of the witch in Hansel and Gretel.
yeah,
Like I love that Greek mythology. Like these are our foundational myths. And like you said, it's all because it's the myth of the quest. It's the hero's journey. It's like why Wizard of Oz is popular and Alice in Wonderland. And like they all, follow this trying to find your voice.
yeah,
And Odysseus needs to survive. And I think that I'm holding my breath with the new Odyssey. I so hope
yeah,
Christopher Nolan, I mean, I'm not a huge Christopher Nolan fan, but I so hope that he does not dilute the female sexuality. I hope that, this amazing cast that's assembled gets to shine in these roles and that there is not censorship behind the tales. But we'll see. Like, what do you think, Christian? And are you excited for the new Odyssey?
I am also not a huge Christopher Nolan fan. I liked Memento. I think partly because it's a smaller scale, smaller cast event. I feel a lot of Nolan's films are about this kind of IMAX spectacle, technical wizardry, and a lot of it
Mhm.
just leaves me a little. cold. Like I feel like it just doesn't, I'm not the right audience for that. I'd rather watch The Duke of Burgundy, or I'd rather watch Gaspar Noé's Love. I'd rather watch I mean, I remember I went to the cinema because they had a screening. I'd never seen it on the big screen before, but they had a screening earlier this year of Pasolini's Salo, 120 Days of.
Oh, oh wow, yeah.
Like
That
I'd
is
rather watch.
wild.
I mean, I'd rather watch films like that, which are just, I feel like so much more daring about their subject matter and about human sexuality than anything I can imagine Christopher Nolan doing. Because I feel like in Nolan's films,
Yeah.
women are hardly present really as characters for the most part. It's really like
They're not
a,
even in the trailer, Christian. That's when I was scared. I was like, wait, I said to my fiance, where are the women?
where's Penelope? Where are the
Where's
side?
Penelope? Where's
Where's
Cersei?
Cersei? I mean, it's like,
Where's
where's
Calypso?
where's
Where are they?
Nausicaa? Like, I don't, okay. So it's a little like, okay. It's a lot of, so I feel like I'm concerned it'll be like another Dunkirk, where it's just about the kind of Odysseus and the fellow sailors in this kind of warlike homecoming. So I
Which
don't,
has
or,
been done. Like that's been done. We need to know, like what I'm more curious about is what you're motivated by, Christian. I'm curious about psychology. I'm curious about the motives and the gender relations and like
yeah.
we'll see. Maybe Christian, we'll have to have you back when it comes out. Depends on how we enjoy it. But I guess like one of my final questions is, do you think that when like we're talking about ratings or when you're talking about the visual, like you've kind of already said, like you know what to expect in the porn, like of a money shot, right? Like you kind of know that even though, right, porn actors are actors, right? They usually don't go by their name. And I guess some of them, like I know some in the industry, they create a character, right? To maybe protect their psyche, protect their privacy, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, we kind of know where it's heading. We're not really going there for the monologues or the dialogue.
Wait,
But
there's monologues in porn?
yeah, I mean, maybe there might be some Shakespearean ones. I don't know. I'm just
That
saying.
dramatic moment.
There's a to be or not to be, and then something
That's an
happens.
untapped market right there, just like the
There we
Shakespearean
go.
porn.
But like something that I find fascinating is what you just brought up, like Pasolini, or I'm even thinking the Canterbury Tales. I'm teaching that, and there's like a really interesting, you know, explicit but not, right? Like again, it is motivated by the story. It's not just like, okay, we're going to be doing this now to take our clothes off. Like so why do you think though like in Europe, why in European cinema is there a catalog where you can point to, oh, they're comfortable with sex. These scenes exist.
Yeah.
Why in America? I mean, we've kind of talked about it, but like, why in Europe do you think there is that comfortability?
Yeah. I mean, I think my guess is I think the um it's an older tradition. There's a more vast literature. I mean, we're coming up on 250 years as a United States, and then there's all the indigenous cultures before America was created as a country. But it's like, what is our tradition seems to be this Judeo-Christian Puritanism with some of this classical Greek
Hmm.
ideas about democracy and literature and so on. So I feel like, when I think back to writers, they would go to Europe to create the Lost Generation and some of the best writers of the early part of the 20th century, like F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest
Hmm.
Hemingway, William Faulkner. And then in the 50s, you have the Beats. They were traveling all over the place, going to North Africa, going to France once again. as well as going all over the US. Um, the kind of golden age of the new Hollywood in America from 67 to 1980, 81, they were inspired by all the French New Wave, all the Italian neorealism, like the kind of
Mm,
European art. And that's what inspired our Martin Scorsese, Francis Coppola, Brian De Palma. So I feel like there's this kind of back and forth dialogue across the ocean through art. Jazz musicians have this as well. I think there's a kind of conversation about what's going on and being inspired by what's happening.
mm,
But I think in the little bit I know from at least some European markets for making films, it's they often have like a film fund that the state uh,
mm.
you can apply to get resources to make your movie. And they're like, yeah, it might be $15 million, $20 million, but that's a
But
good
you can
chunk.
make it.
It's a
You
good
can
chunk
make
of
it.
change to make a good dramatic film. But it's like if you want to make Avengers Endgame, it's like, oh, they'll say like, oh yeah, we don't do that kind of stuff. That's what the Americans do. They go for the giant spectacle MCU huge stuff, which is like a different kind of ambition. And some filmmakers will leave Europe to try and get into that. But I
Mm,
think others are like, no, I'd rather do other kinds of things. Like I don't want to make a bestseller novel like Fifty Shades of Grey. I want to just write my novel. And if it has a more modest readership, that's fine with me because I like what I wrote. But I think others are like, no, no, I got to get the biggest one ever. And I think Christopher Nolan is like, I want to, I mean, he's changed
yeah.
making with, I'm shooting on IMAX. All my previews are scenes shot on IMAX. This is a huge technological innovation to shoot narrative films with that technology, but also becomes his thing, which is now influencing other filmmakers about the use of IMAX technology versus other kinds of cameras. But it's just huge, uh, epic, kind of sweeping stories from Oppenheimer to Interstellar to the Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, these are big
Yeah.
films. Like that's very different than Peter Strickland, who might have like two actors in their feature length film. It's like, yeah, I just have two people. Or like early Steven Soderbergh with Sex, Lies, and Videotape. It's like, yeah, I got four people, maybe four locations. I mean, that it's just
Yeah.
people talking about sex. That's all I'm doing. But I feel like that's a different kind of vision of like what you're making. And I would just hope that, you know, writers especially can continue to find their own place on the shelf, that they don't have to feel like they need to make whatever's trending or completely pivot into a new genre because that's the one that everyone says is really hot right now, but just to keep
Mhm.
writing the things that are really genuinely of interest to them, because I feel like that's what I think is most palpable off the page. You can feel like, oh, this person's really investing
Mm.
some of themselves into this work. I think it's just you can just taste it when you
Yeah.
ingest it.
Yeah, I love that, Christian, that like metaphor you built. And I think that this is like my own theory. I feel like America does so good with the Gothic because of our like
Mm. Yeah,
Salem, puritanical, the what's in the forest. Well,
yeah,
I'll tell you what was in the forest, the indigenous communities that they wiped out. But I think though, like yes, things that have shined is like Mike Flanagan. And I think you also have amazing things with weapons is a good example. Or there's so many interesting horror films that are coming out from American filmmakers. But right, Luca Guadagnino, he's Italian, and it's fascinating what he's done. Or even though he's so controversial, Roman Polanski, was
yeah.
not American either. Um, I don't know about Soderbergh. Is he from America?
Yes,
Oh, okay. So we do have someone who explored erotica, but
a little bit. I mean, they also did large scale films like Traffic, Ocean's 11, 12, 13, but then also did Magic Mike. So had a very, I think they've had a very diverse filmography. But in terms of people that are kind of staying with sexuality or the erotic within their filmmaking. I mean, I think Luca's a good example, or maybe Sean Baker to some extent,
Mm.
or yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know where. I think Kelly Reichardt to an extent. I mean, it's like I think they're much more independent though, and
Mhm.
I think that's it might take a little bit more searching, but I think that's also to go back to the about the publicity machine. It's like for books, where to find the places to figure it out. I mean, I think there's a lot of independent bookstores that seem to be having their own renaissance, and a lot of them only do romance, which I think is fascinating because it seems like
Mm. Mhm.
romance is a
Yes.
huge popular genre. And I think like erotica, which they're tending to blur more often, where it's like, well, this is erotic romance or this is romantasy. Like there's a lot of overlap starting to happen between these genres
Yeah.
where people want to have a fantastic story. They want the hot sex, but they also want character and story and like good dialogue. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we do. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not just some
Yeah.
neat thing. I mean, it's really people want
Yeah.
that more than some indulgent, long-winded so-called literary fiction that only 300 people are going to read. They really
Yeah.
want something that's substantial and delightful. So I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of change happening.
Yeah, you're right. And I will have to do something when I go visit my family in South Jersey. There's a bookstore in Collingswood, that's a romance bookstore. And I'm not curious like what how they handle erotica or if
Yeah,
it's even present really as a category. But, like you've said, there's a lot of these bookstores popping up. I know that there's a new horror one I want to see in Brooklyn
yeah.
that's coming. And I mean, I would love if there was like an erotica bookstore that like tried to mimic you like going through a speakeasy and
Oh my God.
like
That's a dream. I mean, I feel like the sad thing is like there's fewer places than when I first came to New York where you can just find anything like erotic materials. Like there's sex toys, there's dildos, there's condoms, there's lube, but it's like they might have like, a shelf this
Mhm.
big with the most obvious kind of boring
Yeah.
titles. And it's like where's like a bookstore that has the extensive array of erotic literature? I guess that's online because a lot of erotic writers, they don't even have print versions of their work. It's just digital, or it's not even on a popular platform like Amazon. It might be just their
Mm.
blog, it might be just on Patreon. So there's all these different
Mhm.
ways of distributing it, but it also means it's hard to find in the kind of chorus of choices where do I go? So I think one of my favorite stores in the city is the Bureau for General Services Queer Division
Oh yeah. Yeah.
at the LGBT Community Center because they just have erotica, memoir, YA, history, fiction, and it's awesome. I mean, it's a small store packed with so much good stuff, but I feel like
Nice.
we need more of these in our lives because once you're there, you find things you don't expect. You can talk to people working there and say, "Oh, I'm looking for this. What do you recommend?" And I feel like those kinds of spaces are so good for us to find something that we didn't know that we were looking for until someone puts it in our hand.
Yeah. Here's an idea. Um, that if anyone tries to take Christian, they must give me a profit. But what if I think it would be beautiful if they like tried to create a fantasy version of like the porn cinema, but instead it's like bookshelves and they have the film playing, but it's like designed as the theater that you walk into. And, I'm in a monogamous relationship, but maybe there's a back room for others that you're not scared to like go into. Cause I've been to one of those like Hell's Kitchen places and I went in with my fiance and we're like, oh, let's just see what's here. And there was like a very creepy back area that did not seem
Yeah,
sanitary.
yeah,
And it was definitely not a place I would want to sit or do
yeah,
anything.
yeah,
But yeah, it's like these spaces I feel they've just vanished, like in
yeah,
a physical way. And, hopefully it takes money, right? It takes money, it takes investing. And what's amazing though, like you've said, is how much is online. I think that, not being afraid to have conversations like this. Like this
Absolutely.
isn't something we should be scared to talk about.
Yeah.
And I really think like that might be the obstacle in America is so many just don't even know how to approach it because they're afraid they're going to be labeled like
Yeah.
a pervert or all these,
Yeah.
you know, pathological terms.
Yeah. And I think that's actually the benefit of an erotic book or an erotic story is that you can get it in the privacy of your home or in the privacy of your own handheld device, and you can read it without anyone knowing. You can explore things that maybe you can't do or won't do in your day-to-day life, but be
Exactly.
completely fulfilled and be like, I don't want to have sex with 20 different people, but in this story, I can enjoy the kind of adventure of doing that within the boundaries of this work of fiction. And I think that's a very important thing is to not shame ourselves for what we like, what we're into, and also what we're not into. I think there's a lot of um, maybe since 50 Shades of Grey, a sense of like, oh, if I'm going to be really progressive and modern, I have to be into all this stuff like I read in
Mm,
50 Shades of Grey, rather than like, no, find out what you actually like, whatever that is. Maybe it's being handcuffed and blindfolded. Maybe it's being spanked. Maybe it's just having someone talk dirty to you. Maybe it's just being with your partner and talking while you have sex. Maybe it's just turning the lights on while you have sex. I mean, there's so many other things that I think are maybe avoided as being not enough because they think there's some model that they're trying to aspire to. And
mm.
I think erotic fiction is a great way to just explore that and just see like, yeah, check out something that's super kinky, super edgy, but also things that are fantasy, that are supernatural, that are realistic. There's so much available, and yeah, and I think that's a good opportunity for people to just like
Yeah.
maybe start to use their imagination as a way to then have the confidence to talk more about like, hey, I like this. I want to actually know more about it in my
Exactly.
life. That's
And they
all.
have a language of consent around it. And
Yeah,
like, I don't have an IRB study I've done, but I just imagine like it's kind of like those who are horror fanatics. I feel like erotica literature fanatics, they have such a respect or an understanding of sexual language that, like, let's just say people who aren't not just that they're not reading erotica, but people who, are in our government right now, those with, scandals are the ones who are saying to ban books like this. So, riddle me that. How can you be trying to ban material that then you're in your daily life committing sexual illegal acts?
right. Like we have all this money devoted to people who are claiming to be law enforcement whose identities are hidden with no badges, taking people who are on their way to their court appointed appointment as a
Hmm.
um, immigrant seeking asylum. There's money for that, but no, let's tear away the livelihoods of people writing fiction because it has two men or two women. Like what? I mean, I think both those things side by side is what makes us so upset and so just overwhelmed. And I think we need to find places to renew our energy. And I think that
Yes.
energy is in part by finding things that give us pleasure. I mean, it's to quote Brown, it's like pleasure activism, like rest, read a
Mm,
book, let your imagination run wild, be with other people, talk about what brings you pleasure, happiness, and joy, and also just indulge. Because I feel like
yeah.
we're not just working machines. We are not just, these humanoid robots to capitalism, or we shouldn't be. But I
No.
think we're so driven by like work, 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 we might forget like what turns us on, what we like, or even entertain those questions because we have, quote, better things to do. And I think, no, this is about being a human being. This is about, our bodies.
Yep. Well, you've taught me, in Far From Olympus, but your other work too, Christian, is, with my fiance, we're not going to be the centaur and the human, but we might be embracing some mythological
Nice.
play. So Christian, how can everyone out there follow you on Instagram and just, your website too, just to get their hands on your work?
You bet. So I'm on Instagram. That's probably the best way to see what I'm up to and what's happening. It's Christian Pan Erotica on Instagram. My website is the same. It's www.christianpanerotica.com. And if you're in New York City, I just want to put in a plug for the Bureau for General Services Queer Division at the LGBT Community Center because they carry some of my titles. And if you support them,
Nice.
you also support me, and they're a great bookstore. Some of my titles are also at Quimby's Bookstore in Brooklyn, just half a block from the Metropolitan stop on the L train. And
Nice.
yeah, let me know. You can also find me on Amazon. You can find my books online through Barnes and Noble. But just if you can't find something, send me a note and I will make sure you get it because I'm not that big and famous. I have time to reach out and send you a copy of a book. No problem.
Oh, wonderful, Christian. And yes, highly, highly praise the LGBTQ Center, which is still a public space that you can actually sit and read and
Yeah.
enjoy a coffee or something, and they're not going to kick you out, which is rare nowadays.
And a
Very
lot of
rare.
And I mean, a lot of folks don't even know that there's a bookstore there. I mean, I still
Yeah.
run into people that go, wait, there's a bookstore? I'm like, yeah, it's been there for like 11, 12 years. It's a great bookstore, open Wednesday through Sunday. They also have book readings, they have art exhibitions, they have workshops. I mean, it's just a real community space, and they're just great people.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you, Christian. And, hopefully everyone out there, I feel like their like search bars are going crazy. So enjoy whatever you consume, everyone. And there is no judgment here. As long as you never harm someone
Absolutely.
physically.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
It's
Thank you, Christian. This was a great conversation.
my pleasure. Thank you.